Hello and welcome to the show. Now, I am not a big fan when it comes to SUVs, and I've made my thoughts on these cars known in the past. Truth be told, there is absolutely a purpose for these cars. There are times and places where one is completely necessary, and there are plenty of good ones out there. The thing is, 95% of the time, they are not used for said purpose. They are completely and utterly unnecessary. You don't need to have a car as big as this. You don't need a vehicle like one of these, because the terrain that most of them are driven on is slightly damp leaves. And what bewilders me even more is the current trend of sport SUVs. I think the Range Rover Sport was the first of them, but these high-performance SUVs designed to, well, you know, go around corners fairly quickly. I don't understand the point of having one of these, because the one aspect of these designed to be good off-road, you are now severely compromising to make it go round a track fast. Sure, maybe this can just about keep up with some hot hatches, not the likes of the Focus RS and the A45 AMG, they'll annihilate it, but some of the lower tier hot hatches, maybe it can just about keep up with, which, fair enough, is not a bad achievement for a big, heavy SUV. But it just seems so pointless. If you want a fast car, there are so many better options out there for similar amounts of money. You want something that can carry stuff. There are very, very quick estate cars that will annihilate the likes of the SVR for similar amounts of money. I don't understand the point of them. However, when it comes to crazy, Jeep is very much trying to steal the crown with the TrackHawk. This has the engine lifted from Dodge's Hellcats, which means 707 horsepower, 645 torque. That's very much the FailRace school of engineering. Let's face it, it sounds like something I would do in a silly car build. That's a huge amount of power. It's a huge amount of power for a muscle car. It's crazy to put that much power into an SUV. And it's supposedly designed to be a decent car when it comes to cornering as well, not just to have something with ludicrous amounts of power. While I still don't see the necessity of these kind of vehicles, I like the craziness. I like the idea behind it. I like the mad sort of engineering, so naturally when we got one to play around with in Forza, I wanted to find out what it would be like. Now, having all of that power going through the all-wheel drive system in this Jeep does certainly make it rather quick. 0 to 60, 3.5 seconds. Okay, it's not quite up there with hypercars, but certainly this will scare a lot of supercars in terms of acceleration. 3.5 seconds to 60 is bloody fast. Indeed, it'll be doing 100 in 8.2. Top speed, 183 miles an hour. In an SUV. Figures-wise, yeah, this thing is mad. It's very much, okay, maybe not quite current supercar levels of performance, but certainly right up there with some serious machinery. So, straight line speed, it has got sorted, but you would expect it with the amount of power. When it comes to the corners, is the Jeep any good? Well, I was pleasantly surprised. It's a fairly heavy vehicle, as you would imagine, at 5,300 pounds. That's a lot of bulk to get moving through the corners. However, the suspension does a fairly decent job of taming all of this. It doesn't feel too wallowy when it comes to the turns. It doesn't feel too terrible getting it through the corners here. You can still tell that it is a big, heavy vehicle, and you certainly can still tell. It doesn't feel, like a lightweight track car, that much is for sure, but it doesn't wallow around as awfully as expected. The diff in it is pretty awful. It is pretty damn terrible for just spinning the inside wheels as you go around various corners. It's... yeah, you can kind of see it through turn 1 here. While everything is kind of working its best to try and keep the car flat, keep the car on the ground, it will still pick up a little bit when it's going through the corners, and that'll often be enough to unload the inside wheels and just have them spinning around, and the diff doesn't quite know what to do with it a lot of the time. But overall, it could have been a worse vehicle to drive. Now, we have been using Yas Marina for our test track, so naturally, I was going to take the TrackHawk here and see how quicker a lap time we could get out of it. Of course, being from a standing start, the Jeep can use that all-wheel drive launch to power its way down towards the first corner, and for such a huge amount of, well, vehicle trying to get it slowed down there, the brakes aren't too bad. The brakes aren't too bad at all on this. Also, notice how the SUV is bottoming out over the curbs. I would like to point that much out. With this one, it is scraping along the curbs through the first couple of corners. It's interesting through the double apex right-handers there. It's carrying okay speed through that section. It was a little bit scary. Again, you can see the issues I was having with it. It loves spinning those inside wheels on some of these corners. It's a fairly stop-start circuit we have here at Yas Marina, and I think it exemplifies that problem a little bit more around here than perhaps we were seeing at Virginia. Up towards the final corner we go for the Jeep. One more big acceleration zone for the TrackHawk to try and make the most of much fury from the engine as it is going to fire its way across the line. Straight line speed is certainly not in question. It is how much time has the Jeep lost through the corners? Well, it's an interesting one. The TrackHawk will set a 1:14.8. It'll put it into 22nd on our leaderboard. It is a couple of seconds faster than the Audi S3, but it's 4 seconds almost faster than the Volvo V60. It loses out to the Ford Falcon. It loses out to the RS7 by almost a second. The most interesting thing of all, though, is the TrackHawk compared to the Demon. There is only 2 seconds difference in their lap time. Okay, yeah, Yas Marina itself is a short circuit. 2 seconds is a decent-sized gap, but let's not forget, the Demon has got the quite largely uprated engine, is well over £1,000 lighter than the TrackHawk. Sure, the TrackHawk has the advantage of the all-wheel drive launch, but still, that's not bad going. It's not bad going at all to be within that sort of lap time of the Demon, and this is the Yas Marina circuit is not a particular track that either of the cars are going to excel at. It's got quite a lot of technical sections. Cars like the Lotus Evora, for example, at a much longer, faster circuit. I think the TrackHawk probably wouldn't be that far down on the Lotus at some tracks, which is not bad going for an SUV, but as you saw, said SUV was bottoming out over curbs. As far as being a vehicle that is useful for off-roading and so on, not so much, and I suspect there would be plenty of cars, you know, big estate cars that would be as practical, that would go faster around a track. Now, we do have in Forza a sort of stock Jeep Cherokee. I say a stock, this is the SRT Jeep Cherokee. And interestingly, one of the options for the engine swap is to put the Hellcat engine into it. So naturally, I wanted to have a go at building my own TrackHawk, which I shall now name the TrackSparrow. For whatever reason, the engine that can be swapped into the vehicle has 5 more torque than you get in the TrackHawk. I don't know why. It's still got exactly the same power, 707 horsepower, but this one has 650 torque as opposed to 645. The more noticeable difference, though, with the vehicles is weight. The standard Cherokee, after the engine swap, comes in at just under £5,000. It is £350 lighter. Okay, in a vehicle that's weighing getting on 5,000, that's not the biggest percentage difference, but that is still a fair chunk of weight to be removed from the vehicle. Quite why there is that weight difference, I am not sure. The Cherokee that we have, the SRT, is a couple of years older than the TrackHawk. It is possible there's a slight different generation, if you like, of Jeep for the TrackHawk, and perhaps there's more tech in the car or whatever that adds that additional weight. Either way, yeah, my TrackSparrow is the slightly lighter vehicle. Other things I did have to do to try, make it as a comparable build as possible. Brakes, the TrackSparrow got uprated brakes. Tyres were left on the stock compound and the same tyre widths, which were 295s, which were stock for both of the vehicles. I think we've got a sport clutch as well in the TrackSparrow to make it as comparable as we could. The most noticeable thing is the suspension. The suspension, the difference between the two vehicles. We can see watching this car go around Sonoma, the way it's bouncing, the way it's moving around through the corners is quite scary. I'll be honest. Okay, this circuit does tend to bounce cars around a little bit more than some, but wherever you take this vehicle, it is going to roll a lot more through the corner. It's going to move around a lot on the suspension. Now, the vehicles were running the same level of suspension, which would be the Sport upgrade. It's not something that you can tune very much of. With race suspension, you could probably tune it to handle exactly the same as the TrackHawk. You could smooth it out, you could sort the suspension out, stiffen the suspension, lower it, etc. You could probably get it to be fairly comparable. That was the large difference, really, between the two vehicles, was the way the suspension acted. Of course, had to go and have a go around the Yas Marina circuit with my fictional mock-up of the Jeep to see what this vehicle could manage. I mean, you can see the way that it dives, the way that it almost crashes through some of these corners. The issues I mentioned with sort of inside wheel spin through some of the corners is again something that is persistent with this vehicle, and more noticeable perhaps with the TrackSparrow because it just lifts itself around a lot more. I actually have a little bit of a brake lock up on the way into the hairpin again. Another big plume of smoke from the tyres as we head underneath the hotel. Of course, still being all-wheel drive, still having the same amount of power and a little bit less weight, this thing is going to accelerate quick. This is a fast accelerating vehicle, and if anything, while not by a huge amount, I felt the brakes were a little better in the Sparrow. I felt the brakes did a little bit better job of getting, so I had a tiny bit more confidence in the vehicle trying to slow it down. I mean, the TrackHawk was pretty good on the brakes, but this was just that little smidge better as we now run towards the line, and it is a finish for the TrackSparrow. Didn't really know quite what to expect in terms of lap time. My fictional made-up one is about 16 PI down on the TrackHawk. However, it goes faster. A 114.5, it is only marginally, but it does beat the TrackHawk, and it beats the Falcon as well. Lots of birds in that part of the table. Yeah, interestingly, of the vehicles, they had a couple of warm-up laps. The two timed laps that I did with each of them, the TrackHawk did it at 14.9, followed by a 14.8. The TrackSparrow did a 14.5, followed by a 14.5. So, remarkably consistent, with the Sparrow being a fraction quicker. Not sure why, I'm going to be honest. In terms of a vehicle to drive, the TrackHawk is the nicer car. It is nicer to go around a circuit, but it is a little bit slower. I mean, overall, I guess I've tried to build a replica of an actual car, and in terms of speed, they've ended up being pretty damn similar. In terms of speed, they've ended up being very, very close. I mean, 0.3 of a second isn't a huge amount in lap times. The TrackHawk with a better suspension, my one being a little bit lighter. I suspect if we put the TrackHawk on a diet, got it down to similar weight to my one, we'd probably be getting that to go a little bit faster around a circuit. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting trying to replicate a car. I wasn't expecting my made-up one to be the quicker, not after having driven both of them, but there we go. In terms of purpose for the vehicles, I mean, the TrackHawk is cool, it's mad, it's utterly, utterly bonkers. I still don't really see the point in it, but I still quite like that it exists. I still quite like the lunatic engineering. Really like the lunatic engineering that's got into deciding that. And it is relatively capable in terms of a vehicle, but as I said, it's pretty much pointless for something that can go off-road, and if you want a fast, practical vehicle, there are much, much better options out there. Still 700 horsepower in an SUV. You've got to kind of admire the weird madness.